You eat a normal meal, and an hour later, you're suddenly exhausted, foggy, irritable, maybe even craving something sweet again. A lot of people brush that off as stress, age, or just a busy day, but lately, there's a growing conversation around something deeper: blood sugar stability, not as a diagnosis, not as a disease, but as part of everyday health that affects energy, focus, and how we feel after we eat. What's interesting is that this isn't just being talked about by people with diabetes anymore. It's showing up in research, wearables, and everyday experiences from people who simply want to understand their bodies better. If you've ever wondered why some meals leave you feeling steady, while others knock you completely off balance, you're not imagining it. Before we go further, I'm curious. Have you noticed certain foods or eating times that seem to affect your energy or mood? You can share your experience in the comments if this sounds familiar. Because once you understand what's really happening after meals and what actually matters most, the whole picture starts to look very different. And that's where things get interesting. You sit down for a meal that feels completely normal, nothing unusual, nothing extreme. And yet, an hour later, something feels off. Your energy dips, your focus fades. Maybe your mood shifts in a way you can't quite explain. It's subtle enough that most people ignore it, but common enough that millions quietly experience it every day. For a long time, conversations about blood sugar were framed in very narrow terms. Either you had a diagnosis or you didn't. Either it was a medical issue or it wasn't your concern. But that way of thinking is starting to change. Not because people are suddenly sicker, but because everyday health conversations are getting more nuanced, more honest, more connected to how people actually feel in their day-to-day lives. These days, blood sugar stability is being discussed less as a label and more as a window into overall metabolic health. Energy levels, concentration, how we feel after meals, why some days feel steady while others feel like a slow crash from morning to night. And what's important here is that this isn't about diagnosing yourself or chasing numbers. It's about understanding patterns that many people recognize long before anything ever shows up on a medical chart. After we eat, our bodies do exactly what they're designed to do. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, which enters the bloodstream and provides fuel for our cells. That rise is normal. It's expected. It's not something to fear. Over time, the body brings things back toward balance, and for most people, that process happens quietly in the background. But sometimes, that rise and fall feels more dramatic than expected. You might feel alert for a short time, then suddenly sluggish. You might notice cravings returning sooner than you thought they would, or a sense of mental fog that doesn't match how much rest you got the night before. These experiences don't automatically mean something is wrong, but they do tell a story about how your body is responding to food, timing, and daily stressors. One of the reasons this topic is gaining attention now is because people are paying closer attention to how they feel, not just what they're told they should feel. Wearable technology, lifestyle research, and public health discussions have all shifted the focus toward patterns instead of extremes. And that's an important shift, because awareness doesn't require alarm, and understanding doesn't require fear. A lot of confusion comes from the idea that one specific food or ingredient holds all the answers. We're used to headlines that promise simple fixes. Eat this, avoid that. Add one thing and everything changes. But the reality is usually more layered. How food affects us isn't just about what's on the plate. It's about the combination of foods, the timing of meals, sleep quality, movement, and even how stressed we are when we eat. That's why conversations around food quality and timing are becoming more important than conversations about so-called magic ingredients. Fiber, protein, fats, and carbohydrates all interact in ways that shape how gradually or quickly energy becomes available. Meals that are more balanced tend to feel different than meals that are rushed, highly refined, or eaten in isolation from the rest of the day's rhythms. This isn't about rules, it's about noticing differences. Spices often come up in these discussions, not as cures, but as cultural and dietary components that have been studied for decades. Cinnamon is one of those spices that's frequently mentioned, and it's a good example of how research can be misunderstood when it's taken out of context. Some studies explore how cinnamon interacts with metabolic markers, but that doesn't mean it's a treatment or a solution on its own. It's simply one small part of a much larger picture that includes overall diet and lifestyle. What matters most when talking about research is understanding what it actually examines and what it doesn't. Studies often look at associations, trends, and potential mechanisms under controlled conditions. They don't translate directly into real-world guarantees, and responsible health conversations acknowledge that difference. Cinnamon, like many traditional foods, has a long history of culinary use. Research explores it as part of dietary patterns, not as a replacement for medical care or professional guidance. Another important layer in this conversation is food safety awareness. There's a common belief that if something is natural, it must automatically be harmless. But nature isn't that simple. Many natural substances are beneficial in small amounts and problematic in excess. That's why sourcing, labeling, and moderation matter, especially when people start using foods or supplements daily without understanding differences in quality or composition. Public health experts often emphasize this point across many areas of nutrition, not just spices. Reading labels, knowing where products come from, understanding that long-term use of anything, natural or synthetic, deserves thoughtful consideration. This isn't about fear, it's about informed choice. The same awareness we apply to packaged foods also applies to natural products we bring into our kitchens. What's encouraging is that the conversation is slowly shifting away from extremes. Instead of obsessing over single nutrients or chasing constant optimization, more people are focusing on steadiness, regular meals, adequate rest, gentle movement, paying attention to how stress shows up physically. These factors influence how we feel after eating just as much as any individual ingredient ever could. Daily awareness doesn't mean tracking every bite or watching your body with suspicion. It means noticing patterns without judgment, feeling curious instead of critical. Some meals feel energizing, others feel heavier, some days feel balanced, others don't. That variability is part of being human, not a personal failure. One reason this matters so much is emotional. When energy crashes or brain fog become routine, people often blame themselves. They assume they're doing something wrong or missing something obvious. Understanding that these experiences are common can be deeply reassuring. You're not alone, and you don't need dramatic interventions to start paying attention in a calmer, more supportive way. This is where long-term well-being really lives. Not in quick fixes, but in sustainable awareness. Listening to your body over time, allowing curiosity to replace anxiety, letting knowledge guide choices without turning daily life into a constant project. Health doesn't have to be loud or urgent to be meaningful. As research continues and public health conversations evolve, the goal isn't to give people more things to worry about. It's to give them language for experiences they already have, to help them understand why they might feel the way they do, and to remind them that awareness itself is a form of care. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever noticed certain meals or daily habits that seem to affect your energy or focus more than others? If this topic resonates, you can share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else feel less alone. And if you found this conversation helpful, consider liking the video or sharing it with someone who's been trying to make sense of their own health patterns. These are the kinds of discussions that grow stronger when we have them together.